Welcome to Almost 30 Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's Lindsay and Krista. We're so happy you're here.
We're super grateful. I'm really excited about this episode. I'm excited you tuned in to Almost 30. I know there's a lot of podcasts out there. We help people create podcasts. We've been doing this for a long time. But you choosing Almost 30 feels really good. So thanks for being here.
We appreciate you. And today's guest, we have had on our list, in our hearts for quite some time. And as always, we say it a lot, but the timing was perfect.
The timing was perfect.
Perfect. It
Got
just
to be
felt so good.
In person.
Heck yeah. Check.
In Austin.
Check.
Crying.
Check. check.
No, but to talk to Aubrey Marcus was such a pleasure. I think when we left, I was like, I feel like so many aspects of him remind me of me. Just like, yeah, the philosophical part, the open-hearted part, the feeler, the growth-minded kind of rebel. And I think a lot of people, probably see so many aspects of Aubrey that they admire and aspire to. But it was a really beautiful conversation. And I was excited because he has the documentary Awake in the Darkness, which is out at aubreymarcus.com. You can watch it for free with just your email. And I had been watching and really diving into his podcasts and his conversations around his time in absolute pitch darkness. And so it was like a perfect time to come in and talk about that too.
Yeah, I didn't realize what that experience would conjure. I kind of thought like, okay, so you're in the dark for a long time, but I didn't realize that there were psychedelic experiences within the dark. There were, deep subconscious, upheavals happening. And it was really beautiful to hear about his experience. You didn't actually see it because it's in the dark, but his retelling and obviously documentary style audio when he was in the house or in the retreat house in the complete darkness was just super immersive. And, it just speaks to so many things, but it really speaks to his commitment to just going deeper on his time, at his pace, but he's always just seeking a deeper understanding of himself, of his purpose, and also just like the collective experience as well, because I find him to be so compassionate for all. And I think that takes work, I think, to get to that point, to open your heart so much to be able to experience that. But if you all are new to Aubrey Marcus, Aubrey is the founder of On It, which is a lifestyle brand. It's based on holistic health philosophy. And he's also the host of the Aubrey Marcus podcast. It's an incredible podcast. I'm sure y'all are fans. It's a motivational destination for conversations with some of the brightest minds in athletics and business and mindset. And he is also the author of Own the Day, of Own Your Life. These are New York Times best-selling books, so make sure to check those out. And he's also been a native of Austin for a long time, a place where I feel like he was probably the first person to stake claim to Austin.
Literally, the king of Austin. Probably is there like before the whole move.
Oh, yes.
But yeah, I felt just really grateful to be in conversation. It felt like a really transformational time. I feel like when you're someone that is that committed to growth and to like squeezing the juice out of life and really getting the most out of your experience here in this incarnation, you're going to be going through a lot of different transitions, whether good or bad. So we caught him at a really open-hearted time, right after a really powerful ceremony, right before a huge event. So it was beautiful to be in conversation about his love, his relationship, about grief, how to be open-hearted during times that feel hard to be open-hearted. We talked about his current transitions, what he's going through, what he's sort of learning and experiencing in life. And it was just a really present moment deep dive.
You guys are going to love this one. Definitely share it with a friend if you feel called. You can follow Aubrey on Instagram at Aubrey Marcus. You can find him on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the things. And make sure to listen to his podcast, the Aubrey Marcus podcast. And again, Awake in the Darkness, his new documentary, can be found on aubreymarcus.com. It's free. You just need to give your email. Thank you, Aubrey, so much for making the time. And we will see you all on the other side.
We love you.
Okay, the warmer summer months are upon us. We must remain hydrated, and I need to tell you about Element. So drinkelement.com/almost30 is where you're going to go to learn more. But let me just tell you, I have one Element every single day. I pour this electrolyte powder mix, which has no sugar, into 24 ounces of water. And I swear to you that not only do I feel more hydrated, I am more energized, I have less brain fog, and I just feel like my body is more optimally ready to be present, be active. I feel great. I am so excited because they're bringing back their grapefruit flavors, okay? And they brought it back. It's a limited time only flavor. It's here for a good time, not a long time. So stock up. I'm really, really excited for you to try Element. Bring this into your routine. Feel better, feel more hydrated. It's so important that we are getting the proper amount of sodium, the proper amount of magnesium and potassium, which Element has all three. All of the science is on their website, but I just cannot sing their praises enough. I take this with me when I travel. I just do it here at home every single day. It's been a game changer and I feel amazing. So again, for that electrolyte drink mix without the sugars, without the fillers or BS or gluten or anything artificial, drinkelement.com/almost30. Okay. Drinkelement.com/almost30. And you're going to get a pack, a free sample pack with your purchase of every single flavor. So drinklmnt.com/almost30. drinklmnt.com/almost30.
Hello, friends. I am so excited to invite you to Almost 30 Summer Sessions, our camp series, free.
It is completely free. It is our favorite event that we put on virtually every single year, where thousands of you from around the world join to feel good, feel supported, feel connected. And this year is going to be really, really special. So Krista and I really wanted to give an experience of the membership in a few hours. So we pulled the parts of our membership experience, which is our favorite thing that we pour into. It's just so beautiful. And we wanted to give you that kind of behind the scenes look and feel. And so we are going to be guiding you through an experience that we know will make you feel just even more open-hearted, clear, connected, and it's going to be a blast.
Yeah, it'll be so much fun. So when you sign up for camp at almost30.com/camp, you will get added to our camp experience. So what you'll be receiving in your email box is parts of our membership for free. And then when we have the virtual retreat on Saturday, July 30th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific with Lindsay, myself, and our amazing guests, which we'll talk about soon, you will get parts of the membership so you can feel like you're a member for a week.
Yes. And our guests, we'll give you a sneak peek now. We have Shalina Ayana of Rising Woman. If you follow her on Instagram, you know, but she is just so special. Her new book, Becoming the One, is incredible. She'll be doing a workshop. And we are also welcoming Queen Afua.
The queen. We had the best time doing both podcasts with both of these amazing ladies. So they will be doing powerhouse sessions with you that you will hear nowhere else. And then we have our amazing resident healer, Natalie of Love Alchemy, doing a sound bath. We might have a special meditation teacher as a guest. Lindsay and I are going to be doing a really special, unique session. So just know that this day is completely free for you. Our intention is for you to feel less alone, for you to feel inspired, and for you to get a taste of our membership, which we are opening up enrollment for during this time.
Yeah, so camp is happening Saturday, July 30th, 2022, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to be Krista and I and special guests. So make sure to go to almost30.com/camp. Sign up now for free. Share this with friends, and we will see you there.
We'll see you soon. You can register at almost30.com/camp.
Okay, let's roll.
I know.
Let's roll right into it. Actually, what we were just talking about, giving and receiving, that just like hit me. The giving and worrying about the giving kind of cancels it out and doesn't.
Well, they're two very different things, right? Because genuine giving, you're in correspondence and resonance with the person who's receiving. And so giving and receiving actually collapse into a unicity. Because like we all know how beautiful it is when you give someone something and they receive it, or even if you give advice and it's like fully received. Like think of that time you've been talking to somebody and you really get through to them, and then like tears come and you see like see what they're receiving from you. Like that fills you with that same feeling. And so giving and receiving collapse. So service becomes like such a potent medicine for you and the receiver, because it's both the same thing. And that is always like self-fulfilling. It's a wellspring of, of energy. Worrying about what you're giving or about what you're receiving is energy that has no inherent return, right? It's just energy that's being spent and spent and spent in a future timeline or a past timeline that actually will never get received. So it becomes exhausting. So trying to move into a greater level of faith in what is going to be received and what you're going to give, that's where it gets a lot more comfortable. So as we were talking about it, it was in the context of planning events and me planning events for Fit for Service. Typically, we do some planning, we get it kind of sorted out. We have some support, but I'm very confident that there's going to be so many ample opportunities for me to get into that reciprocity of giving and receiving in the small conversations that happen in between events and in between things, the little speeches that I give before and after and all of these different moments. And then the big pieces that I offer, that it's actually very comfortable. And I don't even think of those like, oh, I'm going to be exhausted when I'm done. It's actually like, no, this is great. This is actually feels really good. When there's a situation though, where there's an excessive amount of planning and a lot of things are happening, that's where the exhaustion kind of comes, or there's a lot of worry and things that create a lot of doubt and like kind of limit the amount of faith that you have, because then it just puts you in all of the hypothetical timelines where
the mind loves to go.
Yeah.
Of course.
Do you feel like there was ever a point where you had to have the worthiness to receive? Because I think for a lot of people, they can give, but there's also the worthiness of the act, the worthiness of themselves to be like, I'm actually worthy to receive what I'm giving back. Because I think so many people give, but I think for me, honestly, it was the worthiness to receive that was exhausting me at times. Have you ever felt like you've had to work on your worthiness or self-love enough to be able to receive all the love that you give?
Well, it's true that you will not allow yourself to receive more love than you feel like you deserve. Like we are the guard at the gate. We're Cerberus at the gates of our own love, love Elysium. Obviously Cerberus was Hades, but this is like heaven, right? Like we have a guard at the gate of our heaven, and it's telling us how much that we should receive depending on what we feel like we deserve. So that's true. And I find that more in a different context, though. I find that more in not the context of the giving and receiving collapse. I think I've always allowed myself in the giving and receiving. When I know somebody's receiving, I allow myself to feel what that feels like, because you can't help it. Like it almost, the act of your giving self-justifies your worthiness of receiving the act of giving, right? It's inherent. So it's built in. And that was always probably one of the best ways for me to receive. To just receive from the world without giving giving anything at any time, that's been more difficult. And actually, surely I can always work on greater levels of self-love. We all can. That's a universal, right? I mean, that's a constant. But I actually, if you'll bear with me, I had a big kind of revelation about my resistance to receiving, because I do have resistance to receiving and have had resistance to receiving.
This message is for me, so I'm ready.
Yeah. It was very surprising to me. is very surprising to me. And you'll have to follow me here for a minute. So ultimately, because I know that giving and receiving is actually a collapse, is one of the best things you can do for somebody is to receive, right? Like that's one of the best gifts you can give is to receive. It's such a gift to the person who's giving. And like we know that inherently. And so one way to deny someone the gift of a gift is to deny them your receiving. Like imagine that you're angry at your partner, right? You're upset with your partner, you got some resentment, and they're trying to give you something. What do? You don't receive it. Why? Because you're not going to give them the gift of your receiving, because you're holding that grievance and saying, you don't deserve my receiving. You don't deserve it. So I'm not going to give you that satisfaction because fuck you. Like even some part of us. So that's why resentment is the monster that eats love, because it prevents you from actually receiving the love from your person because you don't want to give them the gift of receiving. So that explains it in a dyad, in like a relationship dyad. But why I was pondering deep in a medicine journey, well, why don't I receive from the universe? And what I realized and what came to me as like a revelation is I have a grievance with God. I have a grievance with God. And I was like, I have a grievance with God? Do I really? And I was like, yes, you do. And here's why. Because we all project the divine onto our parents. Our parents are not God, but we project God onto our parents. And our parents are human and they're fallible. And they will never live up to the standard of the divine. So the more that we've projected onto our parents or uncles or coaches or other people, we've projected the divine. And to the extent that they've let us down, we hold a grievance not with those people, but with God, because we've placed God on all of these other people. So I realized that to actually reconcile my grievance with God, I had to pull all of the godness, all of the divinification that I had given to all of these people in my life and pull that all back and give that back to God. The only place that it can actually be held, the only place where your godness can be held is by God. And so that process then opened me up to the idea like I can receive from God, which means nature, which means people, and which means all of these things without actually holding that grievance to life, to the universe. God may be a hard word for some people, because of all of the ways in which God has been used. And I'm with you. God has been misused probably more than any word in the history of humankind. But nonetheless, like the grievance that I was holding was preventing me from receiving. And by, working to clear that grievance, I've been opening the gates to my receiving even more. But it's not like I snap my fingers and it's all done. But it was a really stunning revelation to get there.
Yeah, I had that issue this year where I was like, dang, I'm having beef with God. Like I found myself with this deep anger and frustration with God. And I was trying to work on what that was and where that was coming from. And there's a lot of like the feeling, a little bit of that little self where you're like coming to earth, you're doing the work, you're kind of in this process of supporting humanity. But also it's like how much when we're thinking about God as our family, our parents, all of these things, it's like within the Catholic Church, God is the Father. The Father is the priest or pastor. Like thinking about how much we do place God in these human type of things. And it's like when we're making God human or we're making God other people or anything else, that's when we really lose the plot and that frustration comes because that's never going to be the source that really fulfills you in the way that is going to sustain you. And I really had to allow God to hold that anger and that frustration that I had during this time of feeling abandoned in a way and feeling lost and feeling like I needed to reorganize my conception of the love of God and that infinite love of God. So that's interesting you had that, and that's really, really powerful.
Yeah, and really well articulated on your side as well.
Yeah.
I mean, God is looking at all of us and God is saying like, you and your story are the most important story in the whole world. Like that's the kind of love that comes from the divine, right? Like really, like tell me more.
Yeah.
Tell me more, sweetheart. Like, and that's what we want from our parents. It's
Yes.
like, how's your day at school? Half
Yes.
busy. No, we want like, hey,
Yeah.
how was your day?
My dream.
Tell me more.
That's why I do a podcast.
I mean,
because
I
didn't get that.
Tell me more.
Yeah.
Like, and that's really, that only comes from our understanding of the divine. And then when we get that, I think that's also why we have so many things that we crave, like constant attention as a kid.
Yeah.
We're like, we want constant attention. Well, that's never going to come from a parent. So our parents are going to let us down. But God's attention is always with it. That's the nature of the infinite benevolence of the universe. It's like all permanent attention, permanent rapture in this dialogue. And so I think all of these re-understandings of the nature of the divine and having these conversations with kids being like, hey, listen, like, let me tell you about God. You know, God loves your story more than any other story and wants to hear every detail. And you don't even need to tell him it, whatever, she. You don't even need to tell her. Just live it. Live it. And she's with you as you living your story and is so into it. And I'm going to do my best to be the same, but I got so many other things going on. I got a lot, and I have to tell my own story to God too. And God's listening to my story. So I got to tell my story too. So we'll both tell our stories, and sometimes we'll tell our stories to each other, you know, but you start planning these things, and I think kids will be like, oh, okay. So my desire for constant attention is, okay, that's actually coming from a proper place.
Yes.
It's what we want. It's what we know the divine wants, you know? And so all of these different elements, the people who want to continue to talk and tell their story, of course, you want to tell your story, but you don't have to tell it to people. You know, like, know that the divine is listening and that the nature of the divine is also, and this is us in our ontic identification as the divine, is to listen. We want to know more. God, as you, tell me more. So we get to step into our emanation and representation of the divine and play both sides. And that's I think, how we need to recalibrate our understanding of the divine. And that changes everything. It really changes everything.
When you pulled that divinity, like from, say, your parents and the people in your life that you placed so much, you know, value in their validation and their seeing you, and you pulled that and placed that back with the divine, how did it change your relationship with them, or how do you see them now? How did it kind of heal the parts that felt like there was a little bit of friction?
So interestingly, I was really running a paradox in my own mind where I'd already forgiven the human aspect of all of these people. I wasn't holding them up to the standard of the divine and then judging them accordingly. I was seeing them for the people that they are. My mom, who is actually as close to a divine and angelic being as any person I've ever known, I'm very blessed in that capacity. You know, it wasn't like I had to change anything with the relation. I still know her as Kathy. I still see all of her humanness and all of her just as a person. You know, I don't even mother to me now. We're like, in some ways, like the roles have shifted, and she looks to me for guidance in many things, and it's this different type of beautiful relationship. So it wasn't so much about the change in the relationships. It was really about the change in my relationship with God and understanding that was the relationship that needed to be repaired, not necessarily the relationship that I had with other people. Now, I could have moved on to, it's not to say that there aren't some challenging relationships still, and some ways in which I still look for approval from certain people, you know, not actually my parents, but different people in the world where I want their approval. I want them to like me, which in some ways is having them be a surrogate of the divine, because if I realize that the divine is in constant approval of me, then I wouldn't need approval from anybody else. But, you know, the separate self is still obviously very alive. You can call that the ego or your identity, or I like calling it the separate self, the one that knows itself is separate from the divine. The separate self is still looking for constant validation from those people who it feels like have authority to declare that validation. So validation from your partner. Did I do a good job? Am I a good lover? Did I honor our anniversary in a good way? Did I make a good dinner? Do you like this thing that I did? Like all of these things that we look for approval. So that one's a tricky one, of course. And then people you really look up to in your, social circle or admire, like, hey, did I do a good job? Was this a good podcast? Or did you enjoy this thing? So there's ways in which I still look for approval that way. And I think some of that's normal. And I don't think that's necessarily something we need to discard with. It just needs to be tempered with not going so deep as that it adjusts your self-worth. And that was a huge trap that I was in for a long time. Like if I, didn't perform as a lover or didn't perform as a basketball player, I felt like I was a total failure piece of shit, and that was, so I didn't have anything to temper the totality of my perceived failure and then internalize that as making me less than worthy. So that was a big one to overcome. And I think a deeper and more conditioned understanding of my divine nature would have really helped with that. But this is all developing now. I mean, you're getting a live snapshot of a photo that's, just developing really over the last so long. I mean, it started, of course, with my first plant medicine journey when I was 18. I was very lucky to go on a vision quest then. So that was 23 years ago, but it's really coming into form now. It's accelerating at a really rapid pace.
Yeah, I mean, to see and watch your process over the years is so wild. Like, it's interesting, for you to mention like the snapshot now. I think when we're so in the here and now, it's like, I feel you and I hear you on that like transformation and that experience and how real it feels. And as someone that's watched you, it's been so wild to see what I feel like you're feeling now from an outsider. It feels like you do all the time. Like it feels like so much a part of the fabric of who you are to be in that transformation and in that journey and in that change and that evolution and that discovery of you. It's been so beautiful. Like it's been so powerful. And how do you allow that to be so public? Like, I think for a lot of people, it'd be really scary for them to be so open about their journey, of their spirituality, of their relationship, of their business, of who they are. And it might be scary for them, but we've been lucky enough to witness so much of it publicly. What has that process been like? And have you ever been scared to share about things that you're going through?
There's always going to be some fear, right? You get over the fear quickly, though, when you realize that the more you share, typically the better it's received, and like the more honest, like the only blanket that's ever going to keep you warm is the truth. Anything else is just a constant level of exhaustion, of strategizing and living in the mind and always focused on this. It's like, how do you really drop into the art if you're constantly strategizing on what you're going to share, what you're not going to share, what's, So yes, it takes some courage, but also once you start doing it, you realize the great relief that comes with it, and people don't really realize that. Like, for example, we had a ridiculous situation happen with this music festival that we were promoting. It's called Arcadia. I don't know when this is coming out, so it might already be done. But fundamentally, what happened was we were planning to do this in Wyoming. And I got word from my team, and there's a guy on the ground, then there's a festival coordinator, then there's a team coordinator, and then there's me. I get word at 11 p.m., celebrating my anniversary with my wife, that our permits for the festival have been pulled 4 weeks out. I was speechless. I was like, you got to be fucking kidding me. I didn't even think of this as a possible reality, right? Wow. Next day, move into action. We still haven't gotten official communication from the town, but the word was that they were having their lawyers draft a letter. So this was it. So I make all the moves necessary. We book into Meow Wolf in Las Vegas as a backup because they have the infrastructure set up that could actually allow us to make a pivot like this so that we wouldn't have to reschedule. And we're already getting crushed in a lot of the logistics that were non-canceled or whatever. But it was the best thing I could do to keep this thing from happening, even though it's going to be a big loss. It was going to be a big loss no matter what. So, all right, we'll keep this happening. We just move it. Find out the next day or later that day, as all the wheels have already been in motion and announcements have been made, that the town didn't actually pull the permits, and that somehow the information had gotten to me incorrectly. But there was rumors that the town was going to pull the permits, and it was this whole thing where I was like, oh wow, you got to be kidding me! I already announced that the town pulled the permits. So then ultimately, there's another situation where we're having to tell all of the ticket holders that they have to switch, and then I got to go back and say, hey, and by the way, actually the information that I told you guys was actually not true, and this wasn't true. So I said that, but then the town or somebody from the town posted a thing like, we never pulled the permits. This rumor was a lie, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, I was been in touch with the county clerk of the town, and we had an email exchange, and I just took responsibility. I was like, yo, like, I'm really sorry. This is the information that came to me. And I don't know if the rumors that they're still saying are true, only you would know. But like, this is the information I got. These were the moves that I made. And I invite all of you guys to come to our festival in Vegas if you want. And it was just radical accountability. And she responded, she's like, thanks for your message and for clearing that up. And I was like, look, I'll clear it up with people. So anyways, someone from the town or somebody posted that they didn't actually pull the permits. Now I'd shared this with the group, but I didn't go into like the very details of it. And then there was this big thing that started like, actually the permits weren't pulled, and Aubrey's been lying to us, and this is all a secret documentary. It was all a secret plan to like move this, and it was a false flag, and it was like, and I get it. We're trained to think of that. We're trained to think of that because of how dishonest the whole world is.
Bless.
And then so some people on our team were like, what should we do? Should we hire a PR specialist to come in and help us through this? And I was like, no, I'm just going to scratch out the names, and I'll show the email correspondence with who I was talking to. I'll tell them exactly what happened. And if that's not good enough, nothing is good enough.
Yeah.
Like, so that's exactly what I did. And everything quieted. But like, and this is just one of dozens of examples when I was CEO of On It, and there was a security breach and all of this. Like, the truth is your only salvation. And the more you deviate from that, from strategy, like the more risk you're actually taking. So yeah, it might be scary, but it's actually less scary. Because they're like, you just trust the truth.
Yes.
Then there's nothing to fucking worry about. And if the world can't handle your truth, that's the world's problem. Like fundamentally, it's like, do you really want to fight that battle your whole life? Where you're, no, just tell the truth. Now, that doesn't mean that there can't be certain things that are private. So let me play like the other side. Like, there is this idea that truth can have a temple. So like the idea of a temple used to house wisdom that was for people who were ready to receive the wisdom inside the temple. And so that's what privacy is. Privacy is creating a temple. And the temple allows only the people that you want in the temple, because they would trample on that information, right? Like, and so there is a place to hold privacy of certain things, certain health conditions, or certain things that are happening that you want only your inner circle to really know about. And of course, all of us have that stuff. But if pressed for some other reason, and like people were storming the gates, like, I must know what's in the temple. Okay, here it is. Like if you really like, fine. But still, like, having the permission to like hold certain things within the temple constructs, I think that's important. And then the final thing that I'll address in this question is, are there things that I'm still afraid of in sharing, right? Like, are there things, and again, that's not considering private things, like there's private conversations that I have with my wife and private, like, of course. But is there something that I'm still afraid of? And yeah, maybe. And actually not maybe, but like, yeah. Like, what if this is a fear? Like, what if I keep continuing on this spiritual path? And what if things get even more intensely profound? Right? Like, what is the history of people in Western culture, like I'm already getting attacked a lot for no particular reason. Like the inherent vulnerability of stepping out even further is intense. You know, like the more open it seems like you get and the more you step into your full authority, the more vicious the attacks become. And like that's, you know, I'm 87% Jewish in my lineage, right? Like the cross is a memory in my DNA. I'm not saying I'm going to be Jesus or anything, or nor that they're crosses, but the attacks come with pixels instead of pitchforks now, you know, and the attacks hurt, you know, they do, they hurt. So really the thing that, you know, there's still some fear for what is happening and will happen as I continue to move down this path, and knowing that the attacks are more vicious. And ultimately that's about the courage to just step into, continue to trust and step into my dharma and step into my truth, and whatever comes, you know, ultimately. And that's, but that does require, it just requires courage, and it requires the ability the willingness to withstand what is inevitably going to come, because nobody steps forward in a big way, and people don't come for them. It's just the nature of our reality. But also there's a lot of love and a lot of transformation that's going to come. So better to live, you know, like a vulnerable lion than you know, a quiet mouse.
Yeah, I mean, it's been incredibly liberating for us to watch you, especially I feel like in the last couple years, you know, obviously the environment that we're living in, or the climate that we're living in, it's like, I feel like you are a leader in that sense where your truth has like very palpably set you free, but there is a love with which and an open heart with which you've shared your truth. And I think from my perspective, it hasn't activated people to react. It's activated people to open and kind of feel that within themselves. And I know you've experienced other feedback, but it's just been really, really inspiring, to say the least, for us.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I was telling her last night, I was like, I feel like he's so protected. Like when you speak,
you really are.
I think you are anyways, but when you speak your truth, it feels, I was like, wow, there's a real, there's a clarity around when you speak your truth that like, I'd never have felt like it like pierces through the people that I felt like would be really critical.
Right.
It's cool.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I actually, you know, to my most serious and aggressive critics, because of that, I actually kind of give them a little nod. Like, actually, if you want to attack somebody, like, you're actually ahead of your time here. You know, like, good for you for understanding that you're attacking something that's really potent, because you know, the potency comes from the authenticity, right? So like, if you're going to try and tear down, which is what that parasitic nature is, let's tear down that which is good and then put it underneath us so that we can elevate our own brand and status somehow. Like, those people who are like really getting aggressive with me already, it's almost like you're a good scout. You know, like I've hardly even started, but you're already on the path. Like, you know,
You're
I
like,
can almost
buckle up, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
It's gonna be a long ride.
Yeah, for sure.
You like become friends with them.
For sure.
Start a DM. You're like, I'm about to drop some heater. Get ready.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I feel like in the expression of your truth, you've also like become, and I would assume that you've always been, but an artist in a way that I feel like has been so refreshing. You know, I feel like we've lost the artist in all of us. Like, I really believe that we are all artists. And there's like a track in life that we're put on and we're expected to be following. And it really does dull that spark within us to create spontaneously and just in an inspired way. Like, what has your relationship been with the artist within you? Has it always been super potent and strong, or has it been more recent?
the first philosophy that I ever resonated with was Toltec philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So it started with Castaneda, moved quickly to Don Miguel Ruiz.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went deep into, that philosophy, the Toltec philosophy. And they have two different words to describe, individuals. Everybody, on the basic level is tonal, which just means they're letting life happen to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of a Toltec, initiate or master is to become what's called a Nagual.
Mm-hmm.
And a Nagual is the painter who's painting the masterpiece of their life and who's really like taking the authority to actually create their own story, grabbing the pen of their destiny and writing their own story. And it's that place of both radical responsibility, which is scary. It's easy to leave things up to some other force, but to say like, no, this is my pen. And like, I'm creating my own reality and my own story. And the word for, Nagual is artist. Like that's actually how they described it. So that's an important theme for me. And what I think the most significant transformation is to really understand what they were getting at. Because it's easy to say artist, oh, well, I'm a poet. I put words together in a rhythmic way that illuminate the truth, words that, illuminate something that isn't even described in the words, a feeling, an idea, a sense, an emotion. That's really what poetry does. Or some piece of, documentary or whatever else, like creating something like that or a book. But really, the thing I have to keep reminding myself is I am the most important piece of art. Like I am the piece of art to make into a masterpiece. And then everything I do will be a window into an amazing piece of art, and that's really been like a refocus of that understanding. And I think it's an invitation for all of us is to look at ourselves as the most significant art that we'll ever produce,
With that, and I wanted to talk to you about this, and as it relates to the time in the darkness too. So if we think about ourselves as art, there's the one side where it's like, I am going to allow myself to channel the divine and create this beautiful masterpiece led by love and led by the truth of what this piece is supposed to be. And then there's sometimes in our personal growth and development space, or, the space that we're in, there's like the needing, like the self-love and the self-hate is such a fine line where it's like, I'm continuing to work on myself, not because I actually love myself, but because I hate myself and because I want to change myself. And even if we're looking at the piece, it's like, how could some people, and I think some people take this where it's like continuing to fine tune or refine or change a piece that was already created by God. But as it relates to the darkness, that was something I was thinking about is like, for someone from watching from the outside, some people might be like, that doesn't seem like self-love to me, to go into the darkness and to do the ceremonies that you do and to do some of the things that you do. It feels like torture, or it feels like pain. So what is that relationship that you have between doing these things that are actually acts of self-love, but are deeply uncomfortable and deeply like dark and experiential?
The heights of ecstasy that are available in the revelation of the truth of who we are is what people would be underestimating when they look at these journeys that are hard, right? Like actually to get to the most radical states of love and the most radical bliss that you can experience from, merger with the divine energy, like that experience is available by going through some really challenging stuff often. Not always. And sometimes it can be pleasurable the whole way. And I think those arts are too very important, like the tantric path, like every part of the tantric path is delightful. It's all delightful. And then it culminates in orgasm, which is incredibly delightful, right? So it doesn't always have to be hard, and it's not always, and it isn't always hard. Like we set the intention for a ceremony with our friends in Sedona, and the intention was laughter. That was the entire goal of the ceremony. So we took some psilocybin, and the goal was laughter. How much can we laugh? And we succeeded. We succeeded. And also some incredibly profound things emerged from it. So I do think that sometimes people fetishize the darkness because they feel like in order to deserve happiness or deserve these feelings, they have to pay for it. And this is like a belief that
it's the hell to get to heaven.
Yeah, it's a belief that we have. And it's often true, but it doesn't always have to be true. And a lot of times, like, people feel like they need to learn from the pain teacher. Well, the love teacher teaches actually oftentimes better than the pain teacher. So there's many ways to learn. And I've learned from both of them. You know, I mean, I think that's the key. I don't think it's possible to entirely avoid learning from the pain teacher, but there's many, many ways to learn. And I think that's something that people don't realize. It's like, choose how you want to learn. You got to learn. Like, one way or another, you got to learn. But there's some paths that are going to be inherently more delightful than other paths. But to me, I've just been kind of available to all the paths because I know that steadily my ability to access the most pleasurable states that I've ever experienced in my life are becoming more and more available the more that I continue down this path. So that's the result that I've seen in my own life.
Has your perspective on people in your life changed? Perspective of their own path of learning and growth? I'm kind of thinking about, as I've done more work and have experienced these revelations, I see my parents' path of growth differently and have come to almost a more like peaceful understanding that my own unique path can be a little bit lonely. I guess what I'm kind of getting at is like the desire to be like doing this with others, you know, and really wanting the people that we love to be also experiencing these consistent learnings and growth moments, but it's just not what is like true. But how have you kind of come to terms with the different rates at which people in your life have chosen, or their souls have chosen to grow in this life? Because yours is very fast.
The desire to change somebody else is ultimately going to lead to a lot of frustration, right? Like, that's really, really a difficult thing. What you have to shift that to is providing a constant invitation. And the invitation is the growth that you're experiencing, right? So like, if you go to your parents with the same energy that you've had with your parents for the last 10 years and try to convince them to do some new thing that you've discovered, but the energy that they're receiving from you is the same that it's always been, why would they do it? All they're seeing is the same thing. So you're like, it was so profound, but meanwhile, the underlying energy and resentments and feelings that you have to them are the same. That's not going to convince them to do anything. In fact, they're actually going to say like, well, that shit obviously didn't work. Because they're the exact same they've always been. You know, like, our relationship hasn't changed, but you show up in a radically different energy and just allow that to be the invitation. Allow them to go like, wow, you seem really happy. Like, what have you been doing? You're like, what? Like, you're so loving right now. Like, it's really inspiring. Like, tell me more. You know, that's what actually facilitates the change. And you can't fake it. You can't do that to like put on a show to show them something that isn't real. It's got to be real. And that living invitation for others is probably the most powerful thing we can do. And then also just accepting people where they are. It has to come from acceptance, because the trying creates resistance. Like, naturally, when you tug somebody, the instinct is to tug back. like that's every animal knows
Mm-hmm.
tug of war. You put a rope in a dog's mouth and start to pull. What does the dog do? Pulls back. We know that. We know that in our it's fucking deeply coded. So you're pulling somebody, they're going to pull back. So don't pull them. Just invite them. Just like if again with the dog analogy, you start playing and then the dog's going to join you and play. That's also something that's like we understand this on an animal level, and we just get it confused as humans.
And I think it's also like a comfort within oneself,
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes there is that like need to bring people along for that validation piece, for that, I think what we were talking about earlier with like placing the divinity in others and really, I love how you described that being the invitation. You living your life is the invitation. It's just much less of this grabbiness and this needing. And it's really like softening within the self. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was thinking about the law of one because, when we see other people on our paths in the law of one, it says the creator blinks neither at the light or the dark. And it's like, when we're looking at other people, we're like, they're learning from so much pain. There is another way. We're like, there is a way of learning from joy. And we're always like, God, wanting them to be on the path of learning from joy. But it's like, that's kind of their path in conversation with the creator, where it's like, oh, I'm going to go back and I'm going to learn by being in as much pain as possible, being in as much agony as possible. But have you ever had heartbreak, on your journey of being someone that evolves so quickly and changes and really has these deep transformational experiences where you are shedding new skin, you're dying, you're being rebirthed, and you've had to leave people behind or you've had people sort of vibrate out of your life? Have you ever had heartbreak because you are no longer in relationship with people because of the speed at which you grow?
No.
Wow.
Oh my
Tell me more.
gosh.
But I also, so I'll tell you more about that. But I have to go back to something that you're saying because I think there's some danger on that understanding, right? Because if you take it that everybody's just learning in the way they've chosen in this soul contract with the divine, like it almost bypasses the real pain. Like pain is real. And I think in some spiritual teachings and circles, we can try to bypass that pain because actually we can't bear to recognize that pain is real, or we kind of blame it on karma, or they must have done something in a past life. We try to find some rationalization. No, it's outrageous pain.
Yeah.
It's devastating, crushing, outrageous pain. It is. And like, it's important to know that that's real. And then, so if you know that we know that that's real. And so the desire to want that to be different is natural. Now we can't bear it.
Yeah.
We can't bear it. Like even trying to touch it for a moment, almost like want to break down on this podcast, right? It's like, it's so much, the pain is so real. And it's so easy to say like, well, that's their choice and that's how no. There's been systems in place, distortions in place. You don't learn from distortion. Distortion is the antithesis of, yes, eventually you can kind of learn from distortion, but distortion is distorting your understanding. And that's where so much of the pain comes from. It comes from distortion at different levels. Distortion, the primary distortion being the myth of separation, as Charles Eisenstein would say, but there's different words for it in different ancient contexts as well. But the distortion that we are actually fully separate from each other, which is a distortion that's been around. So the desire to correct the distortion, I think that's a very real and important desire, is to correct the distortion, to alleviate the pain. This is the essence of the bodhisattva. Like a monk might go to the mountaintop and say, everybody's learning in just the right way that they are, and I'm just going to go on this mountain and meditate, and that's fine if that's your path. But the bodhisattva says, I could do that, but I feel the pain is real from everybody else in the world, and so I'm going to go down and meet them in their pain and help to clear the distortion that they have so that they can actually experience the beauty of what this is all about. Because we do want, it's like we would want the same from ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we want to move ourselves from pain and distortion to truth and love. So of course we want that for other people. You know, so that's, I think it's really important to like recognize that and not bypass how very real the pain is, and how we all can play a role in clearing the distortion. There will always be pain. And then for the pain that is always there and always exists, I mean, we're in a temporal world where people are going to die and it's always going to hurt, and our bodies will take wounds and accidents will happen and all kinds of shit's going to happen. Some pain is unavoidable. And then the willingness to learn from that pain is also very important. We're all going to have challenging experiences with lovers we have to say goodbye to and people that were no longer part of our life. Like, that's always going to be hard. So just wanted to kind of
and when you like get in that, you know, even just seeing that experience of you feeling that pain for that moment where your eyes were watering and watching you tap into that energy of that deep, horrifying pain that so many people experience. It's so, you know, I feel so deeply, like the way that I feel so oceanic, it's hard to even tap into that and then still exist in the world. And you're getting emotional, and I am too. But so how do we live then? Like how, I guess I've been even working on that this year. I'm like, how do I feel as deeply, see so much illusion, see so much distortion, and still be here in service to my own authentic code and to God? Like, what's that journey?
It's important to feel it. It's important to feel it. It's real. It's an honor. It's an honor to those who are hurting to feel our pain and feel our own pain.
Shaman Aubrey is here.
You know, it's important. It needs to be felt. And the beautiful thing is that your body will know when it's felt it enough. Your body, you'll know. You'll know. But without that, you can't recalibrate. The world doesn't make sense. You're living your life in an illusion, an illusion that requires justifications. But to feel it, and it's important.
Yeah.
You know, and I think there's ways in which we feel like somehow we would need to do it all the time.
Yeah.
We don't. We don't. Yeah. We just need to be able to connect to it. And then that actually drives the fuel that we need to actually do everything else that we need to do. And because the response, as you know, Mark Gaffney, who I've been studying his work deeply, he says like the response to outrageous pain is outrageous love. You know, so we have to move into the vibration of love to actually change, to actually help anybody. But first we have to feel the people that we're going to help. So we feel, and that gives us the motivation to help. And then when we're ready to help, then it's outrageous love. Outrageous love. And love has to come from the opening of the heart in a different frequency. And we want a world of joy, be in joy. You want a world of forgiveness, forgive. You want a world of love, love. You want a world of bliss, be in bliss. Like that's the only way. It's the law of resonance. Old Hermetic principle, the law of resonance. Like like attracts like. So we can't stay in the pain and the sadness forever. We'll just create more pain and sadness. We need to feel it to give us the motivation, and then alchemize our own energy into something more positive and draw that world into our own reality.
I feel like I'm always recommending Milk and Honey. Krista and I absolutely love this brand, their products, and we love their spas, which I'll talk about in a moment. But their products are just super clean and just expertly made. I was recently in my DMs recommending a toner, the exfoliating toner from Milk and Honey. I really love it. It uses a blend of powerful clarifying ingredients such as glycolic AHA acid, say that 10 times fast, mandelic acid and willow bark extract to really gently exfoliate the surface of my skin. It also has aloe vera juice and hyaluronic acid to help nourish and hydrate the skin. I just love how it makes my skin look. I am absolutely obsessed with the bakuchiol treatment. So this is a serum plus moisturizer. I will leave this on overnight. It has bakuchiol, a plant-based alternative to retinol. So if retinol bothers your skin, this is a really great alternative. It contains hyaluronic acid and antioxidant-rich botanicals such as black willow bark, edelweiss stem cell extract, and bladderwrack. So it is brightening, it is softening, it's beautiful for your skin. Also wanted to plug their spas, y'all. So I am such a fan of the Milk and Honey Spa experience. I've been to the one in Austin, I've been to the one in LA. So make sure that if you are in those cities, please, please, please check them out. They also just opened their newest spa location in Culver City. So check out their website, milkandhoney.com. And our listeners can use the code almost30, whether it's for a spa service or any Milk and Honey product. You'll get 20% off. Milkandhoney.com. Use the code almost30 for 20% off. Take advantage now and let me know how you like it. I've been looking for a gynecologist here in the city or in Brooklyn, and immediately I went to ZocDoc. It's a free app that shows you doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them. I feel like when I'm searching for a doctor, for a physician, it's usually one or more of those things that are taking a long time. Usually it's like, do they take my insurance? Or are they even available for when I can go? Are they even good? And so ZocDoc covers all three bases. Okay, so you know what you're looking for in a doctor. And so there's no better way to filter through than ZocDoc. The people who created ZocDoc found the major pain points in healthcare, all the things that weren't working, and said enough. So they made booking a great doctor surprisingly pain-free, and I will attest to it. So go to ZocDoc.com, choose a time slot, and whether you want to see the doctor in person or do a virtual visit, and just like that, you are booked. Okay, ZocDoc.com/almost30. That's ZocDoc.com/almost30 and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then start your search for a top-rated doctor today. Many are available within 24 hours. That's ZocDoc.com/almost30. ZocDoc.com/almost30. It's that feeling of oneness that I think we've forgotten. And when it comes like rushing in, it almost like dissolves everything that we think kind of makes up what our world is, the separateness in so many ways. And I think in the work that we do and that you do, I'll just speak for us, like there have been so many moments where we've had that opportunity to fully be in the oneness with one another, especially when we're in person with people. And I think because we identify as leaders, as podcasters, all the labels that we put on, there is kind of this tightening around the heart that happens, at least for me sometimes, where I'm like, I have to maintain that. What would it mean to kind of soften into this true cellular understanding that we are all one? And I really think it's a practice, to allow yourself to do that. And how do you practice, or how do you make this a part of your everyday? Because you're busy, you have a lot going on. There's a lot of structure and scheduling and things that need to get done. What are the soft points in your day where you allow yourself to feel?
Yeah. Well, just to close one loop before I jump into that, the reason I don't worry about people that I've evolved out of our friendships and out of our life is that I've moved out of resonance with them. So my desire to be with them is no longer present. Like I'm just out of, I'm out of resonance. So mad love, but we're just not resonating at the same level. Doesn't mean that there aren't certain types of relationships that it's sad to let go of, especially romantic relationships, right? Like you don't always have to be fully out of resonance. Like I remember one former girlfriend who's, not in a place where she's can be friends. And I really miss our friendship. We used to laugh a lot. Like I really, really miss our friendship. And I hope it comes back. And that's a separate situation. But those are the only things that really there, because I know there's still resonance there. I know that we would still be laughing now, and we just can't. So to answer your question, which is I think a very good question, a lot of times we try to solve a problem like that with the same tools that got us in this situation in the first place. Like, I'm going to go soften my heart. I'm going to go do it, and I'm going to block out this amount of time on my schedule, 20 minutes of heart softening.
Yeah, literally.
And we're going to go at it
like
super
this is
hard.
my cry time.
Yeah, we're going to go at it super hard. And this is our, it's funny, the word atonement, really can be re-understood as at one-ment, and it's like an interesting way to like reframe that as like atonement, at one-ment, so having these moments of at one-ment, and, atonement carries a lot of guilt connotations, and I think that's why it's great to shift that into something a lot more positive. But, so having it as part of this like regimented, yang, masculine expression of how that happens is probably not the way to go about it. I think it's about, really actually softening universally everything and just allowing the lines to soften, allowing the heart to open. It's really hard to like tell your heart to open. It just doesn't really, I haven't found a way to do that. But like the more you soften and the more you just love, the more that you'll see the walls of your heart are actually softening and that the boundaries are actually softening. And so it gets easier, the veil gets thinner. And that's kind of the place. But it's also, we also live in a world, a separate self world as well. That like, that's the thing. You have to be able to embrace paradox to be able to make it out of this thing alive, which is we're all one and we're all not. Both are true. It depends on your dimensional purview. What dimension are we talking about? Talking about first, ninth? Sure. All one. But anything else than that, we're talking about something different, So that's the challenge, is we're a multidimensional being trying to use language to describe a single dimension, and it always fails. So that's why we have to embrace paradox. Yeah, you're all one, and yeah, you're not. Like that's the nature of the game. So it's not about saying that there's some ways that you can claim that only one reality is true, but I think that's actually missing the point. I think the point is that all realities are true. And in the truth of all realities is the total truth. But I think there's a lot of hierarchy that we place, like, well, the only truth is that we're all one and we're all light. Okay, well then how come, you can catch a ball that I throw to you, right? Like there's that, that's not true. Like the anthro-ontological, the ability to understand something from the very nature, we know that's not true. So that's why it doesn't stick. So like everybody's saying like, yeah, it's all a simulation. We're in a holographic universe. All right, sure. You can use that language if you want, but this is real. Don't tell me that you don't feel it. You can talk all that bullshit, but then watch yourself get in a fight with your partner and tell me that it's all a hologram. Like watch someone cry, get inspired in a movie. Tell me it's all a hologram. You're full of shit. Full of shit. Because that's not true. And it is true. And so it's about like holding the paradox of the multidimensional nature of our reality. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up.
Yeah, I think with the simulation thing, I'm like, well, does this make me feel more hopeful or less hopeful? I'm like, less hopeful. I'm like, I'm going to leave that aside, because it's an interesting thing to like explore and think about, but there's so much of the we don't matter in that.
Exactly.
Like nothing matters, where it's like, how helpful is that sort of experience of the simulation? But I want to talk about like the masculine and the feminine. And, it's been like, I guess, what is your recent experience with the feminine? Because I feel like you've been such a beautiful example exploring over the years the balance between the masculine and feminine, even the feminine in yourself. But what is the latest version, especially with your wife, experience of the feminine? Like, what has that felt like, noticing it with you and then with her as well?
So I've had a very public journey in my relationship history, and I'm glad that I brought people along on that journey. Obviously, it took me into the wild open water sea of polyamory. And that's a hell of a way to learn. It's the heights of ecstasy and also the deepest, most challenging, gut-wrenching despair and jealousy and pain that I've felt, really has come out of that experience. And looking back, I'm like grateful for all of it, honestly.
Yeah.
Super grateful that Whitney said yes to going on that journey with me. And, we really did our best. We gave it hell, and I think I've been fortunate from the start that I had such an amazing relationship with my mother and my grandmother. I think that's really, really important to establish your relationship with the feminine as the parent of the opposite sex, and like what that relationship is, how healthy it is. Because I've always had like a deep reverence for the feminine, and that's come. I got my grandma tattooed on this arm, and and one day I'll have my mom tattooed on, the bottom part of this arm, and they're such a big part. It's my left arm, such a big part of my life. So I've always had like a beautiful orientation. Now, that got frustrated a little bit when I was in high school, in middle school, because I so desperately wanted to be loved and in love with, with the feminine. And at that age, that when I really liked somebody, I would really like do everything. I was like writing them poems, and I was like being like all, like super trying to be all romantic and like. And that doesn't really work at the high school level. I don't know.
They're like, ignore me, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
Throw paper at me.
Yeah. So, and that was really, I didn't understand that. And that got really frustrating. But what would happen, was then the person who like I didn't really have a crush on would be like looking at me from the side, and I wouldn't be paying as much attention. And they'd be like, Aubrey, I love you. And I'd be like, oh, okay. Like,
Totally.
I guess I'm down with this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Well,
Such a lover.
I'm getting ignored by everybody who I'm like going after, but you seem cool.
Like, you like me, and that's cool.
Yeah, that's important.
That works.
That's important. And so, I had some really nice relationships that way, but there was like this kind of frustration of like, I don't get it. Like, what do I need to do? I was like captain of my basketball team. I was like doing all the things that I thought would make me like appealing. But what I realized is that fundamentally, and this may be, not exactly where you're going with the question, but I fundamentally realized that what people really want is they want, there's a couple things that I can mention. For one, when you treat someone better than they treat themselves, there's going to be a differential. That's a dissonance between what they're viewing from you and what they think of with reality. So people don't like assholes. People like people who treat them like they treat themselves. That's it. So if you think that assholes win, no, they don't. They just attract people who treat themselves like an asshole, because it's the law of resonance. Again, old Hermetic principle, Hermes Trismegistus, who was actually quite likely the Egyptian god Thoth, right? Like ancient fucking wisdom that's coming in through these hermetic principles. Hermes Trismegistus, the name Hermes, the god of all of this is coming from old sources. And I'm, getting deeper into this through the Kabbalion and different other sources, which is really beautiful and mind-blowing. But it's the law of resonance, right? And that's all that was. I was treating them better than they were treating themselves. And so it didn't really work until you find someone who really treats themselves well. And then you're like, you're a fucking goddess. And they're like, I know. Right on. Let's party. You see me. You see me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so that's the thing. So that was obviously beyond my comprehension at the time, so you can try to play games with it. And I think this is what all the pickup artist whole nonsense was a lot about how to game the system. And it's all black magic. And it's not that black magic doesn't work, but don't fucking play with black magic. Like it's not fucking worth it. It's not ethical by any stretch of the imagination. So that's not the way to do it. You just trust that you'll attract people who treat themselves like you treat them, but be real. The moment you actually put somebody on a pedestal, which is beyond what they actually are, they'll also call bullshit. Like if you treat someone like they're perfect in all ways, then they'll know that you're not seeing them correctly, right? And you can do this with male or female people. Like the moment somebody puts you on a pedestal, like you are not the human that you are, even if you love the shit out of yourself, but they're treating you like a god or like beyond what you really are, or like some perfect being, and you'll be like, well, they don't really get it. So again, it's resonance. It's like seeing people for who they are and what they are and clearing off all of the other bullshit and really seeing them as they are and being in honesty with how that is. And that applies obviously a lot more in my friendships now than it does in anything else. But it creates like a lot of beautiful compatibility with whoever it is. Like recently did a podcast with Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar here and in the studio, and lots of people treat him appropriately like a guru. He's a guru. And I have all of that same respect for him, but I had a conversation with him like he was a friend, and so he just lit up in the conversation, right? And it's like the ability to just, regardless of who it is, see them and just acknowledge them for who they are and love them for who they are and really see that. And I think that's key in relationships in its entirety. I'm fortunate, like I said, that I didn't have a lot of baggage with the feminine because, I was so deeply loved, as close to unconditionally loved by my mom and my grandma as anything. The polyamory path was really a way for me to learn to transcend, at least try to transcend the jealousy that's patterned into our culture. It's like a deeply ingrained pattern that, you learn just from society. And I used to think that the justification for it was beyond enculturation and indoctrination by culture. And I used to make examples of lions or bulls or, some other mammalian creature who will fight to the death to protect their breeding rights. But then you realize that our closest relative is the bonobo. And they have a totally different structure where everybody's just like, you get in an argument with someone, like you have oral sex with them and then you sort it out. Like
that's the new wave.
That's the bonobo
Out
way.
polyamory and oral sex with everyone.
Like, we got a little beef.
It's just a little sucky.
A few licks away from getting back in resonance. But so it realized that it was just culture, and it's just a way. And I was never able, with all my work and all my spiritual access and all the tools that I had, I was never able to fully transcend that level of still that jealousy. Like it still hurt when Whitney would fall in love or be in a sexually voracious relationship with somebody else. Like, fuck. It's like, it was too deep. But nonetheless, it was great practice and like a beautiful way to understand. And also the ability to just love so many different other people. I had the freedom. Actually, the fact that I was able to maintain the closeness that I was with Vailana without a bunch of jealousy and a bunch of other issues and a bunch of challenges that would have come, because Vailana and I were friends. And for those of you who don't know, I'm married to Vailana and happier than I've ever been. But we wouldn't have been able to keep that relationship at that level of depth if it wasn't for the polyamorous container that we had. Now, we weren't intimate during that time, but we were free. We were free to I was free to have that friendship. And then, when that, I was at the point where the arc of polyamory, I realized like, I can't overcome this. And I see the beauty in it, but it's not for this consciousness of this time. Like maybe 40 years from now or whatever, or in certain pockets that might really work. But in my experience, it was just too deep. It was the pain and the programming was too deep to overcome. And so entering into, the sacred union with Vailana, I was really ready. I was really ready to step into that, knowing that I'd been down every path. And the other path that people take is just the path of dishonest infidelity. It's a fucking nightmare. Like, that's not an option, never been an option. So, like, understanding that I've really tried it all, and then now I've found this person that I just love so, so much, and then exploring how to navigate the challenges that can come from, a monogamous relationship in novel ways. And that's something that I think also people misunderstand, because we are also hardwired to be drawn into presence. Like, the beautiful part about meeting somebody new and going out with them is that the novelty of that experience makes you radically present. Like, when you're with somebody for like the first time, or it's like, let's say it was one of my other partners, or I hadn't seen Whitney in a long time, like, you don't even fucking think about going on your phone. You don't care.
Yes.
Like, every word they say, you're like God to them. You're like, tell me more. I want to tell you this. And like, let's have a glass of wine. What time should we go to bed? Who fucking cares?
Totally.
Like, you're in that. But then you get in a relationship where you're with them every day. And it's like, okay, yeah, good. And you're kind of half checking your phone. And like, want to have some wine? Like, I don't want to feel hungover in the morning. Yeah, we should probably go to bed. Should we watch a movie? Yeah, I don't know, man. Probably fall asleep. Whereas otherwise, it's like, should we make popcorn? What about if we did peanut butter and jelly popcorn? You think that would be fun? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. So it's the...
That's why people love travel so much. It's that novelty of new experience.
Novelty is something that we're hardwired to enjoy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's like, how do you find novelty in the same partnership? And so lots of people have approached this question. Like, I remember listening to a talk from Esther Perel, and she was saying like, wear wigs and dress up and all this thing. And I was like,
what do you think about that?
It doesn't fucking work.
You're like trying to wig. You're like, I don't know, man.
It's like kind of novel.
I know.
But it's not really that novel, right? It's like that. How many times are you going to pull that move?
Yeah.
Like, there's only a certain amount of times that you can like trick the brain into
and it's the energy
novelty.
too. There's a novelty of energy when someone's kind of shifted in energy, or there's a different energy. So if you're in a wig and it's you, it's still like, you're just like,
because we're sensing a lot more than just the visual.
Yeah.
Yes.
So those like cheap hacks for novelty, like, go for it. Wear wigs, do whatever you want, but that's not really going to get there. And really, what I've found is the place to find novelty is at the depth. Like, we as people are an ocean that goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And if you can find the ways to connect with that person at ever greater levels of depth, then that's where you'll find the novelty. You find novelty not in breadth, but in depth. And that's the secret to monogamy, is finding novelty at depth.
Can you give us an example of what that looks like for you both?
So take the medicine space as an example, right? Like, as you continue on this path with full intention, you're going to reach levels of depth that are deeper and deeper and deeper within yourself. And as you reach those levels deeper within yourself, your partner is going to have access to a level deeper inside you than has ever been before. And that will be novel. They will be a new person reborn a new time. So the more times you go through this process, the more you're reborn in a different way. I remember for Vi's birthday, which we just had in Sedona, she's been moving through a big death cycle, this big death portal that she's been going through. And she emerged out of it. And she was this expression of this hilarious character that was like performing like twerk karate for like 2 hours straight. And all of us were just looking at each other like, whoa, like what is even going on? It was magnificent. And she's watched me like transform into different characters or open in different ways. And I think the transformational process has allowed that. It's just allowed us to deepen into even deeper levels of ourself. And then as we relate to each other from those deeper levels. So that's one way. The other way is through intentional like tantric practices. We have a practice that we created called the Rainbow Sutras, which goes through different sutras, which are designed to access depth at different levels, all the way from the very sexual to just eye gazing and synchronized breathing and different practices like that. So those are some of the different technologies that you can use to get there, but typically you need some kind of technology to help you get there, whether it's the tantric technologies, which is designed to help you like go deeper and deeper and deeper. Tan meaning to expand, to like expand the moment. And that's another way to look at tantric work is like expanding the presence of the moment. So like imagine a bumblebee. Like just imagine a bumblebee. Kind of interesting. We see them all the time. We hardly pay attention. That's like we are with our lover. It's like a bumblebee that we see and it's in its normal size. But then imagine like a microscope and it zooms into the furry lion's mane that it has above its head and the eyes that's in its myopic glory and the different ways in which all of the legs and the wings are iridescent. And you're like, wow. It just expanded the same thing into a way that you could really see it. And then go even deeper and you'll see the cellular structure and how the atoms are bonded. And imagine going even deeper all the way down to the way that the electrons are spinning and the, quantum creation of this. And you'd be looking all the way down to God, all the way through. So there's like the levels of depth that you can go just to use like this visual metaphor is you can see that in a person. You can see depth upon depth upon depth, expand upon expand upon expand. And so those practices are really, really powerful as well.
Yeah, I think it was fascinating to be a witness to your experience in polyamory because I was like, in my head, I'm like, is he going to be able to, like, not is he going to be able to do this, but is he going to be able to really crack that part of the human experience of jealousy, of feeling like less than because of another lover, of feeling these very human experiences. I was like, whoa, is he going to be able to do it? Because there is, when you spoke about, love is infinite, we should be able to have it with everyone. I was like, yes, bitch, it is infinite. And I'm like, let's see. I was like, I'm going to keep my eyes on
my
you.
husband.
Yeah, literally. I was like, love is infinitely in this space. No, but I was like, whoa, it was a beautiful experience even to witness, I think, as like an outsider and watch all of this. And now it's been so beautiful to see you and your wife just so happy and in this like depth of beauty, and even just a witness of her, to see her just sort of blossom in your love as like a foundation of the experience. For anyone listening, most of our audience is women. So for the women listening, what is a way in which they can invite the masculine in on their process of their journey? If there's someone that maybe isn't as open to you and understanding as you, and maybe they're wanting to have these transformation, these death rebirth experiences of the feminine that we often have, but they're wanting to invite their partner in a way that feels like an invitation rather than like a way to shame or create separation.
This is a very good question, and I think you're tapped into something that is very much in the zeitgeist. A lot of women are more ready and eager to tap into their spiritual potential than men are. Now it's not universal. Like with Fit for Service, it's pretty even, 50-50 across the board, but my audience is 60-40 men. So I have to assume that with that being even, it's probably 60-40 from, or whatever. I don't know what it actually is, but doesn't matter. But it definitely does seem that we also get from women more questions of like, hey, I would really love my partner to be a part of this, but I just can't get him interested. Now, we do get the converse as well. So it's not like its own thing. There's a lot of men that are like, I just wish my partner would be interested in doing breath work or doing medicine journeys or doing this stuff. So I do see it both ways. So it does apply universally. I think the same principles of being the living invitation applies. I think the same principles of if you tug, they'll tug back. I think that applies. I remember, so I'll give an honest example for me because it's very difficult to extrapolate in the general, in the abstract, rather than taking it to something personal, right? So Whitney invited me to do alongside her a year-long course with Layla Martin, who's one of the leading
she's
tantric.
been on the pod.
Yes, she's fucking awesome and a good friend. I love Layla. I've gotten to know her a lot better in the last few years. I didn't know her so well back then. And I was like, nah, I don't know. It sounds like, sounds like an unnecessary amount of, of stuff that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was just a feeling, and obviously it's not that. It would have been a hell of a ride to go on, and I wasn't ready to do it at that point. So, and she didn't understand how to properly like allure me into it. So there's invitation, and then there's allurement. Invitation is by itself an allurement, but to allure me into it, I think you have to have an understanding of what the person really wants. Like what did I really want at that time? Well, from Whitney, I think I wanted her to be like really enraptured in presence with me. Like I wanted her to really, and also like I wanted her to join me on the stuff that I knew was working for me, and she did, she did. And this is like, both of us were kind of like, we had our own desires about how to go about this. But to really have sat down and been like, this is really important for me. And like, I really want to go in with this. And I'm going to be so right there with you when we do this. And I'm telling you, like, I'm going to be right there in this. And this is going to be like amazing. And also like, I'm super open to be right there with you and your other things. And so like, let's give this a go together, because that would have tapped into what I want. Like I really wanted that level of closeness.
Yeah.
And also like I wanted something special for our relationship. And this would have offered that, but I didn't quite get it. Otherwise I would have said yes. I would have said like, yeah, I'm into that, or there could have been ways to like allure me into it by really understanding what I was needing. Because what I felt like I wasn't needing was more like eye gazing practices or, different things like that at that point. Now,
Yes.
Now you're like, that's my shit.
Yeah, for sure. But that wasn't also something that I inherently felt from her anyways.
Totally.
It was like, but you're not really into this anyways. How is this course so I didn't get it. And I don't think she really got it. I think it was the right instinct, but I don't think she really like got into the, like, what do we really want? What do you want? What do I want? And how do we have this thing create what we really want?
Yep. It's like the mutual win. And they say in negotiation, it shouldn't be, each person actually shouldn't win. There should be a different solution that's created that both people come to together. So it's like, how can you find a place where you're both sort of winning, where you're feeling you're being understood, you're being invited, you're being allured, you have the connection, you have this beautiful experience, but also the frequency of coming from a place of the invitation being the frequency that is a frequency of the truth. And sometimes when I think women, we can have that invitation of, please do this course with me. And the frequency is like, I'm hoping that this will get something out of it that might not be very obvious.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's actually there's an undercurrent here. This course is going to provide us with something that I'm feeling like I can't really ask for from you or do for myself.
And there might be a latent subconscious judgment that the person
Yes.
feels.
Yes.
Like,
Biggest
oh,
yeah.
you're not good enough as you are
Yes.
now. So you
Yes.
got to join me on this. And this,
Yes.
like, I'm better than you because I want to do this.
Yes.
And somebody's like, no, that's bullshit. You're not better than me. And so it creates
Yep.
this tug and pull
Mm,
situation.
mm.
So I think really taking the time to understand what your partner really wants,
Mhm.
and there may
So
not be
good.
an alignment,
Mhm.
right? Like, because ultimately all of these things will elevate all aspects of your life. So if your partner, speaking to the women or the men,
Mhm.
if your partner is just really what they care about is success, and like their career is like the most important thing, and this, finding ways to show like, hey, like this, I know it may seem like our relationship, but through the strength of our relationship, like you're going to be expanded in all levels and more capable and access a much greater depth of connection with other people, and the ability to really understanding and knowing how this is going to help someone else's desires as they know them, and also maybe illuminate desires that they didn't know they had.
Yes.
And so I think that's the balance, but it may not be in resonance. And that's the thing. Like if you are really not in resonance with your partner, it's a tough situation, and it just may not work. The law of resonance will move you farther and farther apart. And so if you've made your best efforts and you've really listened to what they want and what you want are different, then it may be time to find somebody who's in greater resonance. I had a couple who were friends, and they were working with some Lakota elders, and they were both going to do their own separate ritual, their own separate offering. And the elder came to them and said, no, you guys do it. You guys do it together. Bury this thing in the same place. They said, well, that's not the tradition. And she goes, it was a woman. She goes, in relationship, there are no two ways. There's one way. And like that was the thing. It was like a deep coming together where your intention has to be mutual. And that's something that Vailana and I find all the time, is we can get very easily lost in us focusing on what our own individual goals are, and forget that we're all actually need to share the same intention, and how to allow for our individuality to shine within that same overarching intention. So it's like setting an intentional hierarchy of needs, a clarification of desire.
Last question for me. I've just on this piece of entering into a monogamous relationship. And I think for me at times, if I was single for 7 years and then reconnected with my now fiance. And at times in the beginning, for the first 2 years, I felt like I was like walking in the dark. When I was watching your documentary last night, I was like, wow, there were some times where I was like, I can't see which way is up, because the truth of what is so like potent. It's almost like all encompassing in a relationship like that is so just so beautiful, but so very much like, this is my mirror. And I wonder what you have been shown about yourself and this experience in being in a union with Vailana and in this partnership that, from my perspective as an outsider, is so clear and true, and there's really no room for illusion at all. What has she shown you about yourself that you didn't know?
The essence of union is the classic pairing of the alpha and the omega, right? The masculine and the feminine. And really, the trinity is formed when you go alpha, chi, omega, which is chi forming the nexus of trinity that actually comes in the relationship, and that actually becomes a portal to the divine. So in the highest articulation, your union should be a portal to the divine. You should be able to find how to love and be loved by the world through your love and receipt of love from your partner. And that unio mystico, like the union with the mystery, can be found in the relationship, in the container. So what can you learn from your partner as a mirror? Everything. Everything. God. Everything. Love. The mystery itself. And that's the beauty of a relationship in its highest articulation, is like it forms the Alpha Chi Omega Trinity, where it's the Alpha and Omega principles, which are contained within us all. We all have our masculine and feminine. But what's really the thing that you wouldn't discover is the real union that can come from when the polarities meet, and then that other thing is formed, which is the unicity or the monadicity.
Oh, beautiful.
And I just want to know what's on your heart. I think at the beginning of our conversation, we were talking a little bit about your ceremony that you did, and we kind of tapped into it, but I would just love to close with, whatever is really present for you and on your heart.
It's the process that I'm in currently at times is utterly overwhelming. Utterly overwhelming, because the options of good choices, good things to do, are innumerable. It's like, I want to do that. 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 I'm not doing anything I don't want to do. But in the unbelievable availability of all of these possible choices, there can be a paralyzing overwhelm. And I haven't fully been able to reconcile that. Like, because how do I say no to each one of these things that I've set in motion? When I love them, I've cultivated them, but also my energetic reserves to be able to do them are, like I said before on the podcast, like I'm redlining my capacity to be able to do anything at all. And like I'm flirting with a collapse of ability to do anything by continuing to say yes to everything, which are all, it's not like this is not an easy choice. In the default answer, well, just, take care of you. You got to take care of yourself. Yeah, I fucking get it. Like I totally get it. But there's so many important things. Like what happens when a dear friend of mine needs my support and I need some support too, but this is the only time that I have available. Like it's not an easy choice. It's not like, well, just don't go out drinking with your buddies. Yeah, I got that part. Like I get that.
Wake up early.
It's an easy choice. You know what I mean? So some choices are easy. I've made the easy choices, but now it's the hard choices. It's like, damn, I don't really know what to do. Like, and that's where the challenge is right now. And today in particular, if you ask me what's on it, the challenge is, it's like, sometimes I don't know how I'm going to keep going. And it's like just a prayer for greater and greater strength. And, I'm friends with a lot of people, Parangi being one of them, who's a sun dancer. And Sundance is the most inexplicably difficult ritual, where you're fasting from food and water for 4 days usually. And you're doing 2 sweat lodges a day while not drinking water. And then at a certain point, you pierce your flesh and tie yourself to a tree and dance until you pull these different plugs out of your body and, like release your offering to the earth. Like while being that thirsty and that hungry. And I ask him, I'm like, how the fuck do you do this? Like I couldn't go through a day without water, it feels like. And I've done a lot of things. I've done the darkness. I've done, fasts, but not a dry fast, so I'm constantly thirsty.
Yes.
I'm like the thirstiest human alive.
Yeah, we're in Austin.
Yeah. And I ask them, and they just say prayer. It's not possible. It's not possible. It is not possible. So prayer is always their answer. And it doesn't matter whether I'm talking to my Fit for Service brother, Ken, or I'm talking to Parangi, or I'm talking to whoever. What that ritual teaches them is that the impossible becomes possible with prayer. And so, yes, I can make some changes in my life and probably will. I don't like using the word should, but in this case, probably should. But I think the other option is to deeply strengthen my prayer and deeply ask for more support from the universe and surrender more. Because it's not just the things that I'm doing, it's worrying about whether I'm going to have enough energy to do them, worrying about how they're going to go, worrying about the outcome of these different things. But if I strengthen my prayer, a lot of that worry will fall. And so a lot of the energy that I'm wasting that's not actually returning anything will mitigate. So I guess, talking through this with y'all, and thanks for asking. And first of all, thank you for asking amazing questions. This is one of my favorite podcasts I've done.
And it's such a pleasure.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. It's not always an easy time for me. And this is one of those times where it's not easy. And I think, the only option I have right now is to strengthen my prayer because I need help. And it's not about people. I know I got lots of people who are willing to help me, but they can't help me right now. Maybe a little bit here or there. Before I came, Bailana was like, how can I help you? How can I help? I was like, I don't know, babe. Make me a shake, and then I won't have to make it. And that'll save me, a minute. But, I need to strengthen my prayer and get support from the universe. And that's, it's the honest truth. What's on my heart right now.
And thank God for those moments.
Yeah.
Thank God.
For all the moments and for all the blessings that, the thing is all of this whole situation is created from blessing after blessing after blessing after amazing friend, after amazing connection, after amazing gifts that can really help people, and I'm so grateful for all of that, my ability to, twice this week, I showed up in deep, deep service, all day ceremonial service to two sisters, two dear friends who really, really needed, my support this week. And I wasn't willing to say no to that. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to, because it was the time. And so all of that is a blessing. It's a blessing that I'm able to serve in that way. And I feel the blessing of everything in my life. And it's not a lack of gratitude. And maybe it is maybe I can increase my gratitude. Always gratitude can be increased. But yeah, it's full acknowledgement of all the blessings, and also just a recognition that it's time to strengthen my prayer.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For sure.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Just even hearing you say that, I have so much gratitude for you being here. And, it's such a reminder for me. I had so much joy in my heart being able to come here and talk to you, because I feel the resonance of your heart, obviously. But I'm just really grateful we were able to sit down, and I'm grateful with everything you have going on that you were able to just share with us. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for making it one of those conversations that I leave feeling more full than when I started. So
us too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show. You can follow Aubrey on Instagram, Aubrey Marcus, and you can go to aubreymarcus.com.
Thank you to the sponsors for this episode. All of the discount information is in our show notes and on almost30.com. We appreciate you all for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to Almost 30, and we will see you on the next episode. Love you so much.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.